Greeting, HMC friends. It's good to be with you. May you know God's presence that is with you today. So a number of years ago, in another church that I was serving, the church required to make a purchase. And so in true church style, we didn't have the money. And so a cake sale was arranged. And on the Saturday, beautiful cakes that had been lovingly prepared were put out for sale. Well, people supported the cake sale extremely well in both purchasing cakes as well as providing cakes to be sold. Enough cakes that in fact there were quite a few left over afterwards. And so it was decided that the next day, which was Sunday, that when tea was served as per normal after church, that these extra cakes would be available and people could have a chance to purchase them. It seemed a solid plan. So the next day, after the service, as tea was served, and normally there were no cakes or eats served with that tea, it was simply tea, a cuppa, to be with one another. It was all served and ready. And a gentleman who lived on the street arrived after the service, but in time for tea. And he was graciously offered a cup of tea. But then he wanted a cake. And a person politely explained to him that this is what the situation was. Though I would have liked them to have maybe just offered him a packet of biscuits. But that was the situation. So he put down his cup of tea and he went towards the table of cakes, crying out in a loud voice, "Jesus spoke about you hypocrites." And the cake table went flying. Cakes and packets of biscuits flew in all directions, as did the people manning that cake table. There was chaos. Now I can already hear some of you saying, well, you should not be selling on a Sunday. And we would want to justify that story with the story of what happened during what we now call Holy Week, when Jesus went to the temple and discovered the priests were selling doves and lambs, amulets for the people to be able to use to access the temple. And in fact, things to be used more to access God, to pray if you want, to pay if you want to say, for a prayer. And in it we see one of Jesus' moments of intense anger, crying out that the priests had made God's house a marketplace. And so, try to sell anything on a Sunday in a church, there will be someone who will cry out with that. However, the story is deeper. The story is deeper in that what the priests were doing was making access to God have a price. You had to buy this piece of worship, this sacrifice. Otherwise, your prayer or reaching out to God could not take place. And you can well imagine what that meant for the poor. It stopped them having access to God. So in actual fact, the story's not really about selling or what time, but it's whether we stop people getting to God. Back to our story, as I said, I think if someone had simply given him a small packet of biscuits, said, look, the other bigger cakes are for sale, it would have resolved the situation. But the question I want to ask ourselves is, who do we stop getting to God? Who do we judge unworthy to sit next to us at church? Who do we think doesn't fit in? For it's those that Christ is speaking about. And maybe the question for this Holy Week is, who can I help see Christ who I don't think really fits in? And so may God bless us and be with us, and take care. God bless.